But yeah, welcome everyone. This is the evening panel to our public interest employer conversation and meeting our META partners. This is basically a precursor to the META summer internship program. Basically, we wanted students to have an opportunity to get to know, you know, public interest employers in the field right now, people who, work for public interest, what they think about their jobs, and give you guys better insight in, networking with public interest attorneys currently. So welcome everyone. I would like to introduce, we have 4 panelists tonight. We have Carolyn Buck from Community Legal Services. We have Michael Perez from Community Health Law Project. We have Amal Bass from Women's Law Project. And we have Lauren Herman from Make the Road, New Jersey. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Before I begin, I guess what we'll do is the same as this morning. I will ask a question, and we can, go down the line, beginning with Community Legal Services, followed by the answer of Community Health Law Project, followed by Women's Law Project, and then lastly, Make the Road, New Jersey, to each answer, if that's okay. So yeah, welcome. The first question is, could you briefly introduce yourselves and your organizations for us?
Sure. So thank you guys again for being here, and thank you, Chandler, for inviting us to speak. I'm Caroline Buck. I'm a staff attorney at Community Legal Services in Philadelphia. Community Legal Services is one of the 2 large civil legal aid providers in Philadelphia. So there's Community Legal Services and our sister organization, Philadelphia Legal Assistance. We provide free civil legal services to low-income Philadelphia residents in a number of different areas. And I work in the family advocacy unit. So my unit represents parents in dependency cases, or parents who have been accused of abuse or neglect and are now facing action in family court.
Okay, hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Chandler, for putting this together, and to everybody who joined in tonight. So I'm Michael Perez. I'm a staff attorney with the Community Health Law Project. We're a statewide organization in New Jersey. We're a nonprofit similar to CLS. And we do provide a wide range of civil defense work, mainly defense work. My specialty is mainly in housing, but I do a good amount of public benefits work, including Social Security cases, welfare appeals, and things like that. I think that's what you're looking for, right?
All right, I guess that's my turn now. So I'm Amal Bass. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Women's Law Project. And before I say a little bit more about that, I do want to say hi to Caroline, who was an intern of ours a number of years ago. And I did have the opportunity to hear Caroline argue before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court last summer. So it's really wonderful to see all the things, Caroline, that you're doing now, and to see you here. And thank you for bringing us together, Chandler and others who put this together. So anyway, I'm Amal Bass. I'm an attorney and the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Women's Law Project. The Women's Law Project is based in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh. I'm, under normal conditions, working out of the Philadelphia office, obviously working from home these days. And we are a public interest legal organization that focuses on protecting and expanding the rights of women, girls, and LGBTQ plus people in Pennsylvania and beyond. We do impact litigation, public policy advocacy, and community education. And as a lawyer there, I do a little bit of all of those things. So I'm looking forward to talking with you all about that tonight.
Thank Thank you. It's so great to meet all of you, especially you who are Philadelphia based. And thank you to the organizers for having us here. My name is Lauren. I'm the supervising attorney at Make the Road, New Jersey. We're a community-based organization. We provide direct representation, and we work through organizing, advocacy, and legal services and other support services, primarily around immigrant rights and workers' rights. So we are mostly in North Jersey. We do some statewide advocacy, and we've had a couple recent victories, including the driver's license bill that's going to go in effect in January, which is super, super exciting, and an occupational licenses bill that passed during COVID that expands access to professional licenses for all folks regardless of immigration status. But our offices where we provide direct legal services are primarily up in North Jersey, in Elizabeth, Passaic, and we were about to open an office in Perth Amboy before COVID started. So now we have a remote organizing committee. So we have different committees that work, and then we have our legal services team that works with our members as well. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, but I'm sure you'll come back if there's more questions.
Great, thank you all so much. So for our next question, so do you, in your subjective opinions about your organizations, do you consider your organization to be large or small? And what impact does the size of your corporation have on your work?
So community legal services is large. I feel like I've lost track of how many staff we have now. I've been at CLS for 4 years now, and over the past 4 years, we have grown a significant amount. We have 2 offices, both in Philadelphia, one in Center City and one in North Philadelphia, although everybody's working remotely now. So that's CLS in general. My unit, so the family advocacy unit within CLS is relatively small. So we have 7 attorneys, and we just had a fellow start with us. And we only represent between 5 and 10% of the parents in Philadelphia that are facing this type of action in family court. So in that capacity, CLS is actually relatively small. But as an organization, I think the impact that our size has on our work is that we typically are in a position to notice trends. Clients that are coming in for intake with very similar issues, we see that in a significant enough of a volume to notice when there is a larger problem going on. Like, this isn't something that just one client is coming in and facing, which then informs a lot of our policy work. So CLS as an organization, we do have a sort of hybrid model where we do a lot of direct client service, but we also do a lot of policy advocacy at the local, state, and national level. So I think that our size definitely helps us make sure that, you know, the policy changes that we're pursuing are informed by the experiences that our clients are facing. And that's definitely a benefit of being a larger civil legal services provider.
All right. So what I didn't mention before about Community Health Law Project is that we do only represent disabled clients who are also lower income, which I didn't give, forgot one of the main points of my organization. But as far as the question, so CHLP has 6 offices, I think, across the state of New Jersey. So as a total organization, we're at least medium sized, but I wouldn't call us large. I was previously with South Jersey Legal Services, which I would characterize as getting into the large size. And I also interned with CLS, so I would agree with, Carolyn, that, that's definitely a large organization. The medium size administratively is good because you have administration that can be in touch with you, but not too in touch with you. On a local level, we're small. I have an office that serves 2 counties. We have 3 attorneys. We have 3 advocates who do mainly Social Security cases, and we have 2 support staff. So there's 8 of us who are serving 2 counties in New Jersey. So on the local side, we're definitely a small organization, which is really nice in a lot of ways because you have a lot of hand-in-hand work with your colleagues. You're kind of right there, and that's all you have. It's nice having the bigger medium network of support there as well to help you, get through things. Occasionally, one of the issues that you have an organization like me, we don't have the capacity to take on some bigger issues. We also need to pick and choose the type of litigation we get ourselves involved in. It has to be necessary litigation, and sometimes you're leaving things that are on the table that you'd like to be able to pursue, but you have to refer out to someone else who has more organizational capacity. Yeah, the other thing, and I'm not sure if it's on a later question, the other big thing I've noticed is throughout the years in the field, one of the biggest differences is funding sources. If you're getting federal government funding, that changes the nature of your organization considerably, and I think affects the nature of the work you can do more than the size of your organization. I think your funding dictates your litigation more than your organizational size, because if there's worthwhile litigation, we'll take it as far as it needs to go. But I know some organizations, the ones that are getting federal funds, they can't always do that depending on what it is. So there you go. That would, women's law, I think, is up. Is that a mom?
Yeah, thanks. So Women's Law Project is small. So I said we have 2 offices, but we have a total of 12 employees. There are about 5 lawyers in the Philly office and 2 in the Pittsburgh office. And, while we are small, it feels like we're a lot bigger. We do have a number of volunteers. We have a fellow that's starting this month. We just had a fellow as well. And we also co-counsel our cases with private attorneys. We don't hand the cases over to them. We do a bulk of a lot of the work, at least 50% of the work. But it does feel like we're able to expand our impact because we have these relationships with pro bono counsel. Part of why I wanted to be at a nonprofit like this is, and I've been there since I graduated from law school. So I've been there 14 years. And I was able to join a small group of people and have an impact immediately. We're a little less hierarchical than I think some other places are as a result of being smaller. And I'm able to take on a lot of things from the beginning that I might not have had an opportunity to do if I were in a place that was a little more, was bigger. And so I get to do a lot of things. And that can also be a challenge because I don't really get to have that niche in some ways. But we do develop areas that, if a certain kind of case comes in, it's more likely to come to me. For a while, that was pregnancy discrimination cases. We now have another lawyer that handles those. And now I'm doing mostly policy work, but I do some litigation as well. I get to sort of pick and choose a lot as well. And I have a lot of say in what I want to do. But when something comes in that's a high priority issue, because we are small, it can be all hands on deck. So it really depends on how we've prioritized the cases. But I've managed to have a lot of say in that because we aren't a lot of people. And so it's nice to be able to have that kind of impact from the beginning, starting right out of law school.
So I feel like I could just say ditto to everything that Amal said. So we at Make the Road, we're also, I would say like small to medium sized, but I like to say that we're small but mighty. I think we have a pretty big impact. And when people find out how small our team actually is, they're usually pretty shocked. I also started at Make the Road right out of a clerkship. And when I started, we were really small, right? We were 2 attorneys, including me, and 1 part-time organizer and a volunteer English teacher. So now our team is about 16 people. So it feels like we're giant compared to how much we've grown. And our legal team is now, we just added 2 new people, including our amazing MEDA fellow. So our legal team, oh, it's been a long day to do math. There's 5 of us, 6 of us. And then we have a couple other lawyers on staff too. So we've grown like pretty exponentially. And, you know, very much like a lot of what Amal said, like the benefits of being a small organization are that we have a lot of leeway and we get to do things. I think even like our summer interns are often shocked at we're like, here, talk to this client. And they're like, what? You know, or, you know, my like very second, I think it was my second day on the job, Sarah, or my supervisor was like, okay, you need to, like, this kid got arrested in Sussex County, New Jersey, like go figure out what happened. And I was like, what? I'm like barely a lawyer. How can I do this? And so I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to take on a lot, to have a lot of responsibility, to do things that, you know, certainly people who are at firms like doing doc review for years, like never get to do. But that is also a challenge and can be intimidating or overwhelming at times. And I think that we also have managed to, you know, be able to expand our impact by working with other organizations, by bringing in volunteer attorneys, so that we can really leverage it. I think Michael was saying, the challenge of being smaller is that our capacity is limited, right? So we do a lot of immigration work, and there are many, many people who need immigration attorneys, and private attorneys are incredibly expensive. So most people, you know, want a pro bono immigration attorney. And so we have to turn away many, many people that we can't serve because our team is just too small. So that is hard. But, you know, I think part of what is really exciting to me about being at Make the Road is that because we have organizing and advocacy work as well, even when we can't directly serve a client, we have other ways for being able to plug them in. Or, you know, like I always say, people will come in and they may have no good options, right? Immigration law is very, very broken, hasn't been updated in over 30 years. And so there are many people that are not eligible for any type of relief. And we can say, look, like, that's why you have to get involved. That's why you have to fight. That's why we need reform. That's why we need better options. And so it does feel nice to be able to plug people in other ways beyond just the direct legal services.
All right, thank you so much. Another question too, related to this, is do you primarily deal with broad advocacy work or direct representation? And how does that focus help your mission?
So I would say at Community Legal Services generally, I would say we still probably lean heavier on the individual client service, but we still do a significant amount of policy work. In the family advocacy unit and me specifically, I do a lot of client work, but I sit on a statewide work group working to reduce the use of congregate care for older youth in foster care. So looking at institutional placements, group homes, and other types of, you know, those types of placement settings to reduce the use of them amongst older youth in care. That was the focus of my fellowship after I graduated from school and started at CLS. During COVID, we've been doing a lot of advocacy around the implementation of safe visitation practices for parents and children. There was a long period of time in between March and August when parents and children that were separated by the child welfare system were not allowed to see each other in person. So we were doing a lot of work around making sure that there was adequate access to technology and Wi-Fi to be able to enable video visits, making sure that, you know, the system social workers were trying to do everything possible to make sure that that was still happening. So a lot of my policy work has been focused on this visitation task force as of late. But I would still say that primarily we lean heavy on the direct client work.
Yeah, we're definitely a client-centered organization. All of our clients have disabilities, and probably 90% of them have moderate to severe mental health issues. So we're very intensive with the casework that we're doing with our clients. We we definitely have our advocacy opportunities. We have a lobbyist that works for us that takes some of the things we're seeing and takes them down the street. We're right in Trenton, so we do have some lobbying that we do. But on my level, the staff attorney level, I participate in a lot of different committees with different, organizations like mine, where we discuss what's going on. I think Lauren's on a call with me pretty often. This is actually the first time I've ever seen Lauren, so hi, Lauren. But we have things like that. But then I'm also part of some different judiciary committees during the COVID restart up of courts with the I guess their mediation sessions or whatever we want to call the settlement sessions. I was actually part of the discussions in Burlington County in terms of what it needs to look like. The courts reached out to me because they knew the type of clients we had and wanted to develop a system that was as mindful of everybody's needs as possible going into mediations. So I've been able to be a part of that in terms of influencing policy. For me, in this point in my career, it's a very good fit in terms of my personal missions of wanting to try to help alleviate the barriers that keep people in poverty. So it's it's a nice balance for us, but we're definitely not. I would say we're not as active as CLS is in terms of my experience with both organizations, but still active in terms of pushing advocacy on the policy front.
So the Women's Law Project does impact litigation, public policy advocacy, and community education. So I'd say most of our focus is pretty broad-based. And one example of some of the, impact litigation that we do right now, we have a case challenging the Medicaid abortion coverage ban in Pennsylvania. It's not a problem New Jersey has; it's a problem Pennsylvania has. And right now with that case is before the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court. So we just argued that we get an appeal as of right to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So that's one example of what we're doing there. And we represent abortion providers. But we also do some direct client representation. And the reason that we do that is, one, we see there being a need. So a lot of those cases are people who lost their job because they needed an accommodation during their pregnancy and their employers refused to give them that, so they're forced out of work. Oftentimes these are low-wage workers who can sometimes get another job and mitigate their damages, and a private attorney doesn't really want to take it, or their damages are somewhat low. And so we end up taking a lot of those cases. We also do some representation in sexual harassment. We do judicial bypass cases as well. And so we do have a number of individual clients. And I think that what's really nice about that is not only do we get to help an individual person and make a difference in their lives that I find it just helps me get through the day, quite honestly. Especially when our courts are becoming so difficult to deal with on the issues that I work on. We do so much reproductive rights, for example. And so I find that these individual cases and being able to make that kind of an impact is really helpful, but it also keeps us grounded in what is really happening to the people that we are serving. And it helps me when I go in to do the public policy work that I do. It helps me understand what the gaps in the law really are. So for example, we advocate for a Pennsylvania Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Also not a problem that New Jersey has. New Jersey's laws are far ahead of Pennsylvania's. But Pennsylvania right now does not have a law that would require employers to provide pregnant employees with accommodations that don't present an undue hardship on the employer. And sometimes we can make an argument under Title VII, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. Sometimes we're successful. Philadelphia has a law that does fill that gap, but the rest of the state does not. And so having these clients really helps us understand what is going on and what kinds of fixes we really need in the law. So we do a little bit of direct service, and I actually really enjoy that work. And I really like being at a place that allows me to use a variety of advocacy tools. And I think direct client work is a really important one, as well as the impact litigation and the public policy advocacy. And really, I'm better at what I do in each one of those areas because I do the others.
So we also do a mix. I would say our legal team does primarily direct representation, but we are, as Michael said, engaged in a bunch of coalitions across the state on advocacy. I think all of us, like in COVID, our conference call numbers have spiked. I'm not sure if it's just one call, Michael. I feel like it's actually like 3 and they're all on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Right?
it is. Luckily, I have other people who sub in on the afternoon call most times.
Oh man. So, we do statewide advocacy. We're involved with a bunch of other immigrant rights organizations. And I have to say, one thing I really like, I'm sure that I guess actually that Pennsylvania is sort of similar to New Jersey. It's really nice to be in a smaller state where you have like a very friendly and collegial bar. I know it can be sort of tempting to want to look for jobs in New York. But when I moved back to New Jersey after being out of state for a while, I was really happy to be in a place where there was sort of a smaller legal community where you can be on 10 conference calls with the same people and really build relationships with them and have good colleagues. So, among the immigrant rights organizations in New Jersey, we work very closely with folks on various things. We worked on the Attorney General Trust Directive, which gave guidance to law enforcement on how to interact with the immigrant community and how to interact with immigration, with ICE. We're doing some of this housing work now, and we also have an opportunity to work with our organizers when they are pushing for various legislation to help draft that legislation, think through what the impact might be. We're waiting any day now for the final regulations on the driver's license bill so that we can inform the community. So that's another thing that we do that's not exactly direct rep. We do a lot of Know Your Rights presentations for our community. When COVID hit, we were on Facebook Live like every single night doing all sorts of Know Your Rights and talking to people. So I think there's a nice mix that we're able to do.
Well, it sounds like we have a good mix of broad advocacy and direct representation. So I think a natural, follow-up is, so what's your favorite part of working with your organization or in public interest in general? But yeah, at your organization, whether it be, doing direct representation or broad advocacy work, what do you favor, I guess? What's your favorite part?
So I would echo everything that Lauren already said about professional development and how it just it happens so quickly in public interest organizations because there's so much work to be done. So the case that Amal watched me argue that I litigated up to the state Supreme Court, I started representing that client a month after I passed the bar. And it took several years to fully resolve, but I was a brand new lawyer and was thrown this case and was just really given opportunities to do really substantive work really quickly. And the supervision is amazing and people really are eager to help you out, but you do have a lot of freedom and agency to do your own work. So it's a unique opportunity and you will be given great opportunities to grow almost right away. What I love about CLS and specifically the work that I do, so CLS is the only institutional provider of the kind of law that I practice in Philadelphia. So I was really drawn to fighting the child welfare system because I see it as just a fundamentally unjust system, especially as it exists in Philadelphia. So community legal services was the place for me to do that and to do that well. And what I mean by that is CLS provides interdisciplinary representation for our clients. So we we aren't just lawyers that are sitting on a court appointment wheel. We have social workers on staff. We have a peer parent advocate on staff who is a parent with lived experience going through the child welfare system, who is on our cases to kind of help coach our clients through this universally horrible experience that they're going through. So it's very collaborative. I get the opportunity to work with people that have a different skill set, which I think makes me think creatively and pushes me to think in ways that we aren't necessarily trained to think as lawyers. So it's been a really good experience, and everybody that I work with is just really supportive and wonderful, and don't have enough good things to say about them.
All right, so my favorite part of working in public interest, and really, especially where I am now at Community Health Law Project, is being allowed the time to actually do the work and the organizational support to do that. That goes along with the opportunity to do the work. Everybody keeps saying, I mean, the moment you hit the door, if you're an intern of mine, when I first started out at CLS as an intern, when I started my first job with legal services, you're doing stuff. I mean, you've got to be competent, right? Well, you're going to get competent really, really quick. And so the opportunity to do the work is huge. And then where I am now, the ability to have a voice in things. I heard somebody else, I think Amal had expressed that when you're in a small organization, you can kind of just walk into that office and say, I think we should be doing this. And somebody says, okay, do it. Nobody else is there to do it. So you're going to go do it. What I think CHLP is really, really good at is, again, allowing us the time to really help people who are extremely heavily barriered. Our clients are, when I was with legal services, we would have 20 to 30% of our caseload that were these very heavily barriered clients, beyond your typical poverty issues, but again, with a lot of mental health, the very acute addiction. And they really are all about giving you the time and resources to help them. We don't have social work because, again, we're on the medium to small side. I don't have a social worker. So I do spend a lot of time either doing some of that social work myself, but more so working on the network of other providers in my area to get my clients linked up. So I'm often the one getting the client linked with the mental health services, linked with the rescue mission, linked with the other things that they need, so that I can then focus on whether there's an actual legal issue or there or not. So we are definitely, still attaching it to a legal issue, but the capacity to do that is far beyond what I had when I was with other legal services providers. So that's what I think they really, really excel at, community health law.
And I really echo a lot of what Caroline and Michael said. I think the ability to just start working someplace and really get into it very quickly and to develop in that way is just a really nice thing. And I really enjoy having a variety of different types of work to do. And honestly, my favorite part about my job is a couple things. I really, really like my colleagues. I genuinely like them. I like being surrounded by people who care. And it's not just a job for us. We really genuinely care about the people that we work on behalf of and the issues that we work on. And it feels really good, particularly in this moment, to be working on something that I think is really meaningful. And I felt that way from the beginning for all 14 years, but it's really felt that way, especially lately. And I just really enjoy doing that every day. So there's just, it's just a really nice place to be. And I do think, you know, sort of what one of the things Lauren said earlier about being in a place with a sort of a smaller public interest community, I guess, or a bar. You know, the Philadelphia public interest community is fairly close knit, and we do a lot of collaborative work with so many other organizations. And so it feels like we're really part of something, and you can really you know people, and it's a real community, and that's a really nice aspect too. That's just, it goes beyond just the organization I'm at. So that's something I really enjoy as well.
So there are a lot of things that I like about where I'm at, although we do not have social workers. So like Michael, I do a lot of social work, and I would actually like probably give my firstborn child up for a social worker, because I think that they are so helpful and really essential to our work. But because we're small, we don't have them, so we do a lot of that. But so I would say what I do love about my job is our members. So like hands down, they are the best part of our work. And I'm going to try to not be too emotional, but I feel like it's been a really emotional week. And, you know, at our staff meeting yesterday, Sarah, our director, like made a slideshow for us of everything we've done over the past 4 years, like starting with like the day of the election in 2016 until now. And you know, like I burst into tears before it even started. Like I saw the first picture there and I like couldn't even take it. And you know, for me, like you know, Amal said it's been a tough 4 years. Amal didn't say that, but she said it's important now to be doing work that you care about, right? And I think it does feel even more meaningful now to be doing work you care about, and for me to be doing it so closely with our members, to know that like I can literally march. You know, it used to be hand in hand, now it's 6 feet away with a mask. You know, with our members, with the people who are directly impacted, and to be fighting with them, and you know, for me to not be coming at this work from like, I think when I got on, people were talking, I think Dean Feathers was talking with Chandler maybe about this idea that like lawyers are sort of like hoity-toity and like lawyers know everything. And so for me, it was really, really important to be working from a place of community lawyering, and that it's not like I come in with all the answers, but that like when we're out there protesting and marching, like I'm side by side with our members who have just as much of a voice and a say, if not more of a voice and a say than I do in any of this, because they really know what's going on. And so that, you know, has absolutely, without a doubt, gotten me through the past 4 years, when there were many days where I was like, can't I just hide under the bed and wait till this is all over? And, you know, and the answer is no, I can't. I have to get up because I'm working with these people who, you know, are relying on me and fighting with me. So that is by far my favorite part of the job, although there are many other good things, many of what some of my colleagues shared as well.
Thank you all so much. And a related question to that, you know, we have a lot of students who are preparing to, you know, try to do public interest work, whether it be internships, externships, summer internships. What are some challenges or the hardest parts of working in at your organization or in public interest, and how have you overcome them as you've gone on?
I would say one of the hard things is feeling like you just don't have the resources to help the number of people that you would like to help. There are a lot of people that come to community legal services that we aren't able to help, either because it's not an area that we cover, or they don't meet our income guidelines, or it's not a priority for the unit at the moment. We do have to make difficult decisions about how to prioritize the types of issues that are coming in that we're seeing, which is hard, because it's hard when someone comes to you and they need help, and you have to tell them that, you know, there's nothing that you specifically can do for them. We do try to make referrals where we can, but there are clients that come to community legal services that we do have to turn away, and that never feels good. In the context of my work specifically, with resources, it's hard feeling like like access to experts is limited for certain types of litigation that we do. And just the fact that we are railing against the child welfare system, which is a huge bureaucracy. Making change at all inside of a giant system that is so deeply entrenched is difficult. So, and we are very often the only voice pushing for change on any aspect. And that's hard. And sometimes it's overwhelming and sometimes it's disheartening. And I don't know if I can say how to overcome that, because it's a constant struggle. But when you're working among a group of people that feel the same way, that share the same struggles, and that my unit particularly is very supportive, and we have regular meetings to talk about like the issues that we're seeing. We do check-ins at the beginning of all of our meetings, which especially right now has been really helpful because all of us are scattered around and working remotely. So that definitely is helpful when you work with a group of people who can kind of commiserate and take some of that load off of you.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, the hardest part is you are absorbing a lot of trauma all the time. There's trauma coming at you all the time. And that's the struggle, because you can't let yourself absorb too much of that trauma. You cannot get caught up in that trauma, because you need to think rationally. You need to look at the parts of the story that matter to you. But you are hearing really horrible things on a daily basis. And that gets tough. So for me, good therapist. Also, it took me a while to find an organizational philosophy that matched with my practice philosophy. And that was a really big difference to me. But also what was already said, you can't help everyone. So there's some people who come with problems you can't help, and there's some people who come with problems that it doesn't matter what you do, you're really just guiding them from, for me, sometimes I'm guiding them through the process of their eviction into their eventual homelessness. And there is absolutely no intervention I can do besides explain to them as best I can what every step of that process looks like. And that's about it. And yeah, so it's one of those things that I think it comes back to a theme I keep hearing. You do almost have to kind of be called to this type of work. If you are not really plugged into wanting to help people and everything that takes, I don't think you last in this field very long. And yeah, that to me is the toughest, is this figuring out what to do with that trauma, because it does go somewhere. Even if you don't connect with the client in that moment, you've heard those things and that trauma's with you. And so, yeah, then also having a healthy life outside of work, having good activities, having things you like to do, and having people to vent to. So I'm interested to hear the rest of the answers.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think that one of the things about being at a place like the Women's Law Project, where we do some direct service, but we do a lot of other things, public policy and a lot of impact work, impact litigation, where we don't have, I don't hear, I definitely have traumatized clients, but I don't have as many, and I don't hear as many stories as people who do direct service day in and day out. And it does make, I think, my daily life at work a little easier. We do have social workers. We have a social worker who hears stories from people every day, and that's really hard. And we get a sense of what people are experiencing from her. And some of the cases we take come through our what's called a telephone counseling service, comes down to us through that service. And I do like that I can sort of retreat into something that's very policy oriented and a little less on the ground. But I do think that it's hard sometimes when you do that work that's policy oriented to make sure that what you're doing is really actually grounded and is really what's going to solve the problems that people are really experiencing. And also and something I found challenging is as a lawyer at the Women's Law Project, what is my role versus the role of other people in all of the coalitions that we work in. Coalition work is really challenging. It's also very effective when done well and really important. And, trying to figure out what our lane is, what we should be doing. Are we getting the right input? Are we providing the right feedback? All of those are things that I find is challenging, and we're always learning as well from those experiences. But I do think that being at a place that allows me to do a variety of different things has helped me protect myself a little bit too from some of the really heaviness that can come with doing this work.
So yeah, I would echo a lot of what's been said, and I don't need to repeat it. I think I guess one challenge, I guess a couple of challenges that haven't been mentioned already would be, starting off at a small organization where I was thrown into a lot of different work. I feel like there's always a sense of imposter syndrome of like, who am I to be doing this? And like, do I know enough? Like how, like people will come in all the time and, I've been doing this for 5 years now, and people are like, well, I need to talk to the lawyer, and I'm like, okay, well, like find her, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, they mean me, and feeling like, who am I to know what I'm talking about? That is hard still sometimes, and obviously you learn and grow very quickly, right? And it's sort of amazing to see as I've taken on new attorneys that I supervise now, it's been really amazing to be like, oh, wow, I actually have learned a lot. Like there are things that I know. But I think that's always hard. I think working in immigration in particular, it's just been like a bloodbath for the past 4 years. Like it's been really brutal with stuff changing all the time, and it's really hard to stay on top of it. And so I think, having good coworkers, I could not emphasize that enough. I know that all of the other folks have shared that as well, but like having a team that you feel like really supports you and that you can commiserate with. And, I feel like once you're in the trenches with people, that's really amazing. And I guess one other challenge that I feel like people sort of hinted at, but didn't quite articulate in this way. And so, I work with a lot of folks who've experienced trauma, and I was expecting that. And, the effects of secondary trauma are very hard. And there's a great book, if you guys haven't read, called Trauma Stewardship that like saves my life on a pretty regular basis. I would highly recommend it. But one thing that I don't think I had anticipated was when folks' trauma would interfere with my ability to do my job, right? So, my job is to help people apply for immigration benefits. But if somebody is so traumatized that they can't talk about what's going on or they can't share their story with me, I can't do what I need to do. And I think there is a lack of other support services in New Jersey that has been really hard for me, that if there aren't people like helping someone get housing or helping someone access mental health care, then I'm not able, I have to focus on those things that aren't really my job, and I can't do the things that I need to do. So I think that's been a challenge that I don't know if I had anticipated. And I think the way to work around it is I tell myself I'm doing my best to help. And if this is what someone needs, if someone, needs help getting food that day, like that's what they need. And their immigration case is going to be secondary. And I think also working with the other folks across the state and building coalitions to say, like, we need these other support services. Like, how can we get these resources? How can we better so that we can do the work that we're supposed to be doing?
Thank you all so much for your vulnerability. Thank you so much. So at this time, if anyone would like to ask questions, you can either use the raise hand function or type the question in the chat and I can ask it for you. But while people are thinking of questions, I'll continue asking. So for students who are considering either, doing a summer internship or, even after law school, if they wanted to, work at your organization, what did you do that got you to where you are, and what advice would you give to students who are also striving to get there?
So I would say that the things that I feel like helped me the most were definitely my clinics and my pro bono experience. I went to Penn, and it's a very heavily corporate school, so it doesn't cater much to preparing you for practical litigation. So definitely those were experiences that I not only found to be the most rewarding, but I felt like actually gave me practical experience that helped me kind of run into my internships and then my fellowship and eventual full-time employment, feeling a little bit more prepared. So I definitely would encourage you to seek out any hands-on experience that you can get, whether that's an externship, a clinic, volunteer work, because it'll help you figure out what you like, what kind of work you're drawn to, both in terms of like what that actually looks like on the day-to-day basis, as well as like the actual substance of the law. And it will help you build practical skills that you can then use in interviews and will just give you a leg up in any job search that you go to.
So I came into the law as probably my third career. I went to law school as a 37-year-old who had quit their job or their career of 10 plus years in community education. So I'd been working in workforce development in Philadelphia for the previous 10 years before law school. So for me, I always thought it was just a Jones to be involved. So it was all about being hands-on. It was about getting into internships at organizations that I knew were going to give me a lot of experience and a lot of reach. So, CLS was my first summer, PLA was my second summer, had a fellowship with the university, my postgraduate year. So yeah, during law school, it was about clinics. It was about doing Marshall Brennan. It was about volunteering. I was an APL president, but for me, it wasn't about getting to whatever my next job was going to be. It was about that's what I was and who I was. There was nothing else I could do. I just felt like this. What I did, because I actually, to be quite honest, I didn't know I wanted to be an attorney when I went to law school. I knew that was a possible outcome, but I wanted to have more impact on policy. I wanted to feel like I could actually help people transcend poverty somehow, because being in workforce development, which was, literacy based, I saw how trapped people were, and I just wanted to have a degree that helped me do more than that. And in the end, the job I got was attorney, and that's how I'm doing it. But yeah, so for me, it wasn't really about getting to this point. It was about just doing what I do or what I feel like I need to do. And that's how I ended up here, I guess. I don't feel like that made sense, but Dean Friedman was nodding at one point, so I hope I got it right.
Well, it made total sense to me. And I think that, I don't really have that much to add to what's been said already. You know, I think getting hands-on experience was really important, and also demonstrating a commitment to public interest in the issues that I'm working on today was really important. And I know that's something that we look for when we're looking for, an intern or a fellow or a staff member. And if you'd asked me 14 years ago, how did I get this job? I would have said I was just lucky, that it was just lucky that the job opened up and they thought of me. But why did they think of me? They thought of me because I had been an intern with them and I made connections there. And that's how that happened. And when I see sort of what's happened to people who've been interns of ours and where they are now, um, the paths are sort of similar. And they had a lot of hands-on experience and a lot of word of mouth and connections, and building those connections is also really important that you get from having that experience. And you don't do it to get the connections, you do it because you care about the work and you want to do that work, and that shows. And so, I don't really have anything to add. That's been my path, and one that I've seen play out again and again.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what's said. Clinics are amazing. I'm so grateful for the clinics I was able to do. And I think one thing that felt important to me is being able to do different types of internships and to get exposure to different types of work. So I never thought I wanted, Michael and I should talk, I never wanted to be a lawyer. Like when my friends in college applied to law school, I thought they were insane. And and I'm very happy as a lawyer. I really like being a lawyer, but I think for me, I also did not think I wanted to do direct representation at all. And I love it. I love working with clients. But it was only through different summer internships and saying like, okay, this is what it's like to do impact litigation. This is what it's like to do more advocacy and to see how that different type of work feels, and to try out different organizations. Like, I think even within the public interest world, you're getting a sense of that here. There are really big differences among different public interest organizations, right? There are the like more corporate-y public interests, and then there are the grittier public interest groups. And so, getting a sense of what type of feel and what type of institutional culture you're looking for and feels good to you, I think can be really helpful. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing that. And I think Amal was just saying, like, demonstrating a commitment to public interest, right? There's sort of, people assume like the corporate jobs are super competitive, and I think that that's true. But there also is like, there aren't that many public interest jobs, and so it can be competitive too. And I know that when we look to hire people, and I say that also knowing that not everybody can afford to do public interest jobs, right? Like a lot of times we can't afford to pay interns. And so if you don't have a school that's able to support you, that can be really hard. But even if you can't necessarily get like an unpaid internship or something like that, if there are ways that you can show a demonstrated commitment to public interest work and sort of like a thread that goes through your resume and through your story of how you've kept this as a part of your story, I know that can be really helpful and be really compelling to an employer.
I would just to circle back, Warren, volunteer work, just put in your hours in the pro bono programs and public interest programs, brag about your 100 hours of public interest work that you did. It matters, especially when we're looking at interns or we're looking at people who are fresh out of law school. Yeah, we're absolutely looking for this thread. I mean, the fact that you volunteered maybe when you were in college, so volunteer work is really a great bridge, and it is actually a good way to start figuring out how dirty you want to get. So, if you're more comfortable volunteering at the senior center versus the methadone clinic, that tells you something. And so, yeah, I think Lauren, I hate to circle back, when I had my turn, but I thought Warren really hit on something there.
Thank you all so much. So I see there's multiple questions, and we'll go in order they came in. So Melody asks, what is an average day like for a summer intern at your organization?
So interns at CLS, what the typical day-to-day looks like will vary depending on the unit. We have a few units, specifically our housing unit, that is very heavy on intake. So I know that our interns do help a lot with the intake process. Also our utilities unit, the energy unit, does a lot of intake, and interns in those units do a lot of negotiating with the utility providers, doing calls like that, like more informal advocacy to try and resolve issues without bringing things to court. All of our interns do have a balance of direct client work as well as some sort of other work. And what that other work is depends on what's going on in the unit at the moment. So that could be appellate litigation, that could be a Know Your Rights presentation, that could be city council testimony, that could be an expungement clinic. So there is sort of a balance between your individual client work and some sorts of other projects that interns will be working on. And we always tell our interns, if there's something specific that you're interested in doing, just make sure your supervisor knows about that so that they can arrange those types of opportunities for you.
Right. So for our interns, it really, a lot of it has to do with what they're interested in. Since there's, 3 attorneys and we're all basically generalists, if we know somebody's really interested in housing, we'll each probably work a housing case or 2 with them while we're getting them up to speed. But one of the premiums we do put is getting people ready to try to be in front of a judge or some sort of decider of fact, whether it's an ALJ or even an informal hearing. We like to be able to get them in front of somebody. Of course, COVID's much different, but I know with my interns, it's, I try to give them the case file and let them start figuring it out with me there to hold the rope for a while. And hopefully after a couple of weeks, they're ready to, swing a little bit more on their own. And, like I said, if we can get them in front of a judge at some point, that's great too. But yeah, we try to make it, once we get them trained up and supported, we want to, this is what the job is. You come in, you open your file, you make your calls, and you work the file,
I see in the comments, Jill Friedman mentions a writing sample, and you will get a writing sample at the Women's Law Project because it is a lot of research and writing and a lot of sitting at a desk and doing research and writing. So if you like that, then we're a good place for you. But it does depend on what is going on. We are a small place, as I've said before, and it's all hands on deck sometimes, depending on what's happening. So if we have major litigation going forward, everyone will be working on that, with maybe a few exceptions. But everyone gets an opportunity to do a little of everything that happens. All the issues that we work on, if something's happening that summer, you will get a piece of it. And you will work with all the attorneys. And this is the first summer because of COVID that we actually have made sure that people get to work with our Pittsburgh attorneys as well, if they're otherwise in the Philadelphia office. And I think that COVID has really broken down some of the barriers that we even had in our own organization and has increased our ability to work well together, which has been really nice. And so that's something I think will continue to be the case going forward. And so you really get a sense of the wide range of work that we do because sex discrimination infects every aspect of life. So we have a lot of different kinds of cases and a lot of different issues we're working on at any given time. So a little bit of everything, a lot of research and writing. If we're going to a meeting, you're welcome to come with us. You kind of get to do a little of everything, which I think is, I was an intern at the Law Project a summer after my 1L year, and that was the experience it was then, and it's still the experience now.
Yeah, so it's sort of hard for us to a typical day. It's a really good question, but I think our work is pretty varied. So we try, like at the beginning of the summer, to sit down with our interns, find out what they're most eager to do, and we try to break up our work into like short-term projects, medium-term projects, and long-term projects. So we try to make sure that all interns will have like 1 or 2 long-term projects of research and writing. Usually it's going to be doing country conditions or something like that for an asylum case. And that's something that they can come back to if they're ever in a lull, if there's not something else going on. We try to make sure that everybody has some client work, if it's working with a client to develop their declaration or fill out a type of application. One thing that was surprising to me that folks may not know, immigration is very form-based as a law. So like you're filling out forms a lot of the time and you're like, wait, really? I went to law school to like write check boxes, but they're very important check boxes and you cannot mess them up. So, we'll let interns work with clients on that, and sometimes if we have like smaller cases, like a DACA application or a citizenship application, the interns will be able to work on those and be able to complete those. Some of the longer immigration cases, it's really impossible to complete in a summer. And then, meetings or, other research comes up. Maybe one of our committees has a question or, yeah, it's pretty terrifying, Jill. Those check boxes, man. And so, we'll let folks, do know your rights presentations, meet with the community members. It's pretty varied. Like we had one of our MEDA interns actually was like hunting down a client's passport from the Guatemalan consulate, like calling them nonstop and like trying to, they said that they had shipped it and they hadn't. So, it's like there's a little bit of whatever comes up. This summer our interns were doing some COVID work. But as other folks have said, I think it's important as an intern to let your supervisor know what's important to you, what you want. Absolutely, if you want a writing sample, like for me, a lot of the time, I'm just as happy if you give me bullets as I am if you give me like a formal brief. But if it's important to you to have a brief, I'm of course happy to edit that brief for you and make sure that you have a good writing sample that you can use going forward. So I think it's good to have that conversation.
You.
Sorry, Dean Friedman, not Jill.
Thank you so much. So for our final 2 questions, we have Jason and then we have Haley. So Jason.
Hi, thank you all so much for being here. So I am a 3L and I was fortunate enough to have an internship on my 1L summer at Community Legal Services. So just a quick shout out. It was eye-opening and wonderful and everything that they've all said. But I've also found myself interested in the policy end of things. So from all of your perspective, you can either answer this question on like a local, state, or federal level, but in the spirit of Joe Biden whooping Trump's tush on Saturday, if you had to pick one policy that you would want changed, or like what is the biggest legal hurdle that you face towards like helping your clients, because you can only help within the confines of what the policy writers have written. And so just, I hate to make you pick one because I'm sure there are an absolute ton of them, but if you could just kind of enlighten us as to some legal hurdle that you face that a policy writer would be able to resolve from that end.
So we've actually been having a lot of conversations about this in my unit. So the biggest legal issue we have is not necessarily with a policy, it's with a federal law called the Adoption and Safe Families Act. Under this piece of legislation, once a child has been in out-of-home care for at least 15 out of the last 22 months, the county agency is required to petition the court to terminate the parental rights and move on to adoption as the next preferred permanency outcome. So that means that before we look at any other outcome that would provide, a stable living arrangement for the child, but still allow for an ongoing relationship with the parents, we have to first get over a hurdle of adoption, meaning that the law prefers terminating parental rights so that kids can be adopted over keeping families intact in other arrangements that would keep kids safe, but still allow for lifelong connections with their families. So we see this as a huge racial justice problem because we know, I mean, in Philadelphia, if you've ever been in family court, you see who's there. But we have a huge racial disproportionality problem in the Philadelphia child welfare system. Black children specifically are like amazingly overrepresented. It's profound. So that when you combine it with this piece of federal legislation means that it's a modern day systematic destruction of Black families in a way that could be very easily fixed if we could just change this one piece of legislation that puts adoption above all other outcomes. So that's something that we have been talking about a lot lately.
Yeah, we don't have anything so specific. We've got a small state level thing we're working on right now. But I would say the the biggest things that I'm looking for is huge expanses of affordable housing and access to subsidies. I think if COVID has shown us anything, housing was already a very, very tenuous situation. And once, especially here in New Jersey, courts reopen. I think Philadelphia is on moratorium right now too. But things are going to get brutal, and that's because people couldn't afford where they were living before this crisis. People were, our housing costs were already well out of whack well before this happened. And so that's one of the big things I'm really looking forward to or hoping for. My always pet peeve coming from my days as a workforce development person is I actually think one of the major flaws in our welfare system is the work first initiative, that we're forcing people into jobs that there's no way they can ever sustain, which basically puts people on a training to job to unemployment to welfare to back merry-go-round, and never allows people to transcend poverty because there's no access to education step. It's get back to work, search for a job, not get yourself equipped for the job that you can have the rest of your life. And what goes along with those two things is free access to higher education and loan forgiveness for those of us who've already mortgaged our entire futures to do the jobs that we do right now. Because you in law school understand the loan burdens that you're taking. I don't need to explain it to you. And even with public interest loan forgiveness currently still there, that's something that could always disappear. So that's, so that's not agency specific at all. That's me personally. That's not the opinions of Community Health Law Project.
And I'll just say very quickly that I do a lot of policy work on the state level in Pennsylvania, and right now that doesn't look very good, the terrain. So it hasn't really changed much in terms of what what we're going to be able to accomplish with the General Assembly being what it is. In terms of the agencies, I am looking forward to a completely different Department of Education, and very specifically related to sexual harassment in schools, as well as the very narrow definition of sex that the Trump administration has been using, excluding people who are transgender, for example. So I'm really looking forward to changes in that area.
That was a great question, Jason, and I so appreciate hearing everybody else's answers. Caroline, I'm like horrified. I did not know about that law. I guess on immigration, there are a lot of things that we would like to change. My sort of like joke policy ask is I want COVID amnesty. I think that all immigrants who have been here and lived through COVID should get amnesty and should be able to get green cards and become citizens. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe if we all start talking about it, we'll build a movement. I think there are a lot of like direct things with, right? Like we haven't had comprehensive immigration reform in 30 years. As excited as I am about the election, I don't think we're going to get it now either. But I think, you know, reinstating DACA would be awesome. Protecting TPS, giving back TPS designations would be awesome. There are there's like a 3, I don't want to get too wonky, but there's like a 3 and 10-year bar for folks who have been here without status. If they leave, they have to then wait 3 or 10 years before they can apply to come back to the US. And it prevents many, many people who would otherwise be eligible from getting family-based green cards from doing so. So I would love to get rid of that bar. I would like to wipe out all of the changes the past Attorney General made to asylum law and like various decisions. The public charge rule is pretty horrible. I'm actually hopeful that maybe we'll get rid of that. I'll stop because I could keep going and going. And we have staff meetings planned for next week where this is what we get to dream. So I think, you know, I would say it's exciting to be able to dream big again. And I think obviously we're all realists. We've been in this world long enough to know that like a new president and a moderate centrist at that is not going to like build the world we want, but it's exciting to be able to think about a world that we want and to be able to at least fight for it again instead of just like clawing our way against constant attacks.
Amen.
Thank you all so much. And I recognize some people have hopped off since it's past 7:30, but thank you all for staying. For our final question, we have Haley.
My question is not so thought-provoking as Jason's, but I was wondering what types of things you look for when you're looking at a resume or an application for a summer intern.
I would say interest in the work, any skills that are relevant. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have like a 10-year public interest all-star resume, just skills that would be transferable. So if you've ever worked with clients in any setting, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a legal capacity. Anything that you've done with community organizing, is definitely always an asset. Anything that you've done with community education or trainings or workshops, again, not necessarily in a legal capacity. So we definitely just look for anything that would be a transferable skill, genuine interest in the work, a commitment to serving low-income populations. And then if you have any language skills, it's always a plus, but definitely not a requirement.
Yeah, I could basically just say ditto. Yeah, I look a lot at the people skills. You know, have they done any organizing group? You know, and it comes down to the form questions. You know, you're going to ask a candidate about how they work with a group and give you an example of a time they were in a group, and sometime then when they were the leader, and one time when they were the follower, and you know, or questions like that. So we're definitely looking for your ability to get along with others and to also be personable to our clients in terms of the real soft skills. And then I think we've already hit on most of the other things. As far as, you know, volunteer work, things like that, moving those things forward. And I don't know about anybody else, but does anybody look very closely at writing samples? Like I'll glean through a writing sample, but I mean, can we be honest? And
We do.
You look closely at it.
We don't even ask for them.
I really
yeah.
don't, and I'm not a.
Oh, we do, and we've asked for additional writing samples from some people as well.
Okay.
We're very writing focused. We are a very writing based place.
Fair enough.
What we don't care about are grades at all. And I'm always surprised when people send them to me. Although I think our Pittsburgh office sometimes asks for them when people think that we all care about grades. You know, I was hired and they never asked for my grades. So, you know, yeah, but writing samples we do read and care about. Yeah.
Is there anything else, Amal, that you care about?
I mean, all the things that's already been said, a commitment to public interest, that kind of thing. And you know, we also like it if somebody has a an interest in working in, this general region, and we tend to like that as well. But that's not necessary. It's just a connection point.
So I would echo everything that's been said on commitment. The two other things I would add, for us, Spanish is really important. I would say like 90% of our members are monolingual Spanish speak. That's really, really helpful. And the other thing, and I'm still trying to figure out how best to assess this in interviews, is flexibility. So, our work is sort of like, it's a fast-paced office. Things are changing all the time, like especially with COVID. And so it's important for us because it helps us out when folks are flexible and are willing to jump on a project when it comes up. But I think it's also important for students because someone who is not flexible is probably not going to be very happy with us, and they're going to have a hard time in our office. So that's another one that I would put out there. And again, that like, if that's not your thing, that's totally fine. It doesn't say anything bad about you, but it's just probably not going to be a good fit. And then I guess the last thing, and Amal, you were saying this, for me, I do look for people who care about New Jersey. And it's sort of funny when I say that, but I feel like sometimes New Jersey is treated as like the ugly stepchild, right? It's like the second choice to New York. I can't get this job I want in New York. And so when people really love New Jersey and are committed to New Jersey, that really speaks to me.
All about that one. Well, thank you all so much for your willingness to come speak to us, and for your vulnerability and your candidness. Thank you all so much for your time.